On March 8, 2023, an excavator rolled up to a perfectly functional jet aircraft sitting on the tarmac at Grant County International Airport in Moses Lake, Washington. The machine's hydraulic shears cut through the wings. The fuselage was crushed like an empty soda can. That aircraft was registered JA-21MJ, the very first Mitsubishi SpaceJet prototype ever built, the same plane that flew triumphantly over Nagoya Airport in Japan on November 11, 2015, flanked by 3 Japanese military chase planes while a crowd of government officials and engineers watched with tears in their eyes. $9 billion spent. 15 years of development. Not a single paying passenger ever boarded. And in the end, they didn't just abandon it, they destroyed it. To understand how this happened, you have to understand who Mitsubishi Heavy Industries actually is. This is not some startup that overreached. Mitsubishi manufactures 35% of every Boeing 787 Dreamliner, including the wings, one of the most structurally demanding components on any aircraft flying today. They build F-15 and F-2 fighter jets under license. They make ships, rockets, and power plants. When Japan announced in 2008 that Mitsubishi would lead their first commercial aircraft program since 1974, it looked like a guaranteed win. The government saw a $100 billion regional jet market that Boeing and Airbus had basically abandoned, and they wanted a piece of it. $500 million in government subsidies backed the program. Toyota Motor Corporation and Mitsubishi Corporation each took 10% stake. The Development Bank of Japan was in. The target was clear. Build a 70 to 90-seat regional jet, grab 20% of a market forecast to need 4,500 aircraft by 2028, and break even after just 300 to 400 sales. The aircraft they designed on paper was genuinely impressive. The MRJ-90 was powered by 2 Pratt & Whitney PW1200G geared turbofan engines, the first regional jet program in the world to select this engine, promising 20 to 30% better fuel efficiency than the competition. The cabin interior stood 80.5 inches tall and 116.5 inches wide, noticeably roomier than anything Bombardier or Embraer offered at the time. The cockpit ran the Rockwell Collins Pro Line Fusion system across 4 massive 15-inch landscape displays, replacing dozens of analog dials. The original plan projected entry into service by 2013 with total development costs of $1.3 billion. Launch orders arrived immediately from All Nippon Airways, Japan Airlines, and major U.S. regional carrier SkyWest. Everything looked perfect on paper. The first serious crack appeared just 1 year into the program. In 2009, Mitsubishi quietly dropped their plan to use carbon fiber composite wings, the same technology they used on the 787 Dreamliner. At the smaller scale of a regional jet, the complex joints and heavy titanium fasteners required to attach a composite wing completely canceled out any weight saving the carbon fiber offered. Composite content collapsed from a planned 30% down to just 10 to 15%, limited to the tail section. The first flight, originally planned for 2011, slipped immediately. Then slipped again. Then again. By the time JA-21MJ actually lifted off in 2015, the program was already 2 years behind schedule and the budget had doubled to nearly $3 billion. But the real disaster was hiding inside a number that Mitsubishi executives had known about from the very beginning and chose to gamble on. In the United States, which represents roughly 70% of global demand for regional jets, airlines like Delta, United, and American don't operate regional routes themselves. They outsource them to partners like Delta Connection and American Eagle. And those partner contracts contain what the industry calls a scope clause, a hard legal limit negotiated by pilot unions to protect mainline pilot jobs. The limit is 86,000 pounds maximum takeoff weight and 76 seats maximum capacity. The MRJ-90 weighed 94,358 pounds at maximum takeoff weight. That is 8,358 pounds over the legal line. Mitsubishi knew this. Industry consultants warned them. Trans-States Holdings, one of their biggest customers, eventually cancelled their entire order of 50 aircraft in 2019 and explicitly cited the scope clause as the reason. Rather than redesign the aircraft, Mitsubishi's leadership looked at the most powerful pilot unions in American aviation and decided to bet $8 billion that the unions would blink first. The unions never blinked. Not once. While executives were losing that gamble, the engineers ran into a wall that nobody inside the company had anticipated. When Mitsubishi began the FAA type certification process, the regulatory gauntlet every commercial aircraft must survive before it carries passengers, the examiners didn't just want to see a plane that flew. The FAA required meticulous documentation proving exactly why every single engineering decision was made, how every system behaved under catastrophic failure, and how redundancy was maintained. Mitsubishi's engineers had built the aircraft the way they built military hardware. Focus on making it work, treat the paperwork as secondary. The problem crystallized around the MRJ's 23,000 individual wires. When outside consultants finally reviewed the internal wiring layout, they found that thousands of redundant electrical and flight control wires had been routed through the exact same physical spaces in the avionics bay. One localized fire or structural failure could sever both the primary and backup systems simultaneously, an unacceptable safety risk that traced directly back to the 1996 TWA Flight 800 disaster, after which the FAA had dramatically tightened all wiring certification standard. Mitsubishi had no documentation explaining why the wires were routed where they were. The FAA's response was blunt. Prove compliance or rebuild from scratch. In January 2017, Mitsubishi announced they would tear out and completely redo the entire electrical system. That single documentation failure cost them 2 years and hundreds of millions of dollars on top of an already bleeding budget. By 2016, desperate to run more flight hours than Japan's congested airspace allowed, Mitsubishi moved their entire testing operation 5,000 miles across the Pacific to Moses Lake, Washington, a former U.S. Air Force base with 5 runways, one stretching over 13,000 feet, and clear skies 340 days a year. At peak operations, the program employed 400 people in Moses Lake and another 200 in Seattle through engineering partner Aerotech. Japanese families relocated. A Japanese restaurant opened. Children attended local schools. The expat community earned the nickname Little Tokyo in the middle of the Washington desert. Mitsubishi was spending millions every month just to sustain that colony while the certification clock kept running. In June 2019, with the program 6 years behind schedule and the MRJ brand now synonymous with delay and failure, Mitsubishi attempted a full rebrand at the Paris Air Show. The MRJ became the SpaceJet. The MRJ-90 became the SpaceJet M90. A new smaller variant, the SpaceJet M100, specifically engineered to fit under the 86,000-pound scope clause limit at 76 seats, was announced. It was the plane they should have built 10 years earlier. To gain the certification expertise they never developed internally, Mitsubishi paid $550 million to acquire Bombardier's entire CRJ regional jet program, buying not planes but the engineers, maintenance network, and institutional knowledge of how to actually pass FAA certification. By doing so, they also handed Embraer's E-175 a near-total monopoly on the U.S. regional jet market. Then March 2020 arrived. The COVID-19 pandemic destroyed global aviation overnight. Airlines stopped buying aircraft. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries posted a loss of $275 million for the fiscal year ending March 2020. The SpaceJet budget was slashed by 95%. The Moses Lake operation shut down. The 400 engineers packed up and flew home. Little Tokyo emptied out in weeks. By April 2021, Mitsubishi Aircraft Corporation had cut 95% of its entire workforce, leaving just 150 employees to maintain what remained of the certification documentation. On February 6, 2023, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries officially canceled the program. CEO Seiji Izumisawa stated publicly that they had failed to confirm sufficient business viability and admitted the company had been naive about the complexity of certifying a commercial aircraft. The final number, 1 trillion yen, approximately $9 billion US dollars, spent over 15 years. 0 aircraft certified. 0 aircraft delivered. 0 revenue. And in Moses Lake, one by one, the excavators came for the jet.